The photo came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing in my $10 million smart home reviewing blueprints for a client's project when I saw it. Dominic at some Croatian beach resort, tanned and grinning his arm around Scarlett Dubois, my former best friend. Her head rested on his shoulder like she belonged there, like she'd been there all along. But what shattered me completely was the background. My mother, Eleanor, champagne glass raised high. My father, Arthur, smiling wider than I'd seen in years. My sister Serena and my brother Leo, both laughing like they were at the celebration of the century. They were toasting my replacement, toasting my erasure, all of them. The message underneath was short and brutal. Don't be at the house when we get back. Once it's old, it's dead in my eyes. 3 seconds. That's how long I stood frozen. 3 seconds to watch 12 years of my life reveal itself as a lie. 3 seconds to understand that everyone I loved had been planning this. 3 seconds to feel something inside me die and something else, something harder and colder take its place. I lifted my eyes and looked out my floor-to-ceiling windows. Across the street, a demolition crew was tearing down a Victorian mansion, 100-year-old walls crumbling into dust under heavy machinery. The foreman was directing the controlled destruction with precision, each blow calculated, each collapse intentional. I smiled, actually smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled in weeks, and it felt sharp as broken glass. They wanted me gone. Fine, I'd be gone. But I'd make damn sure there was nothing left for them to come back to. Before I tell you what I did next, and trust me, what comes next is going to blow your mind. I need you to do something. If you're already hooked on this story, if you want to see how someone turns complete betrayal into perfect revenge, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because I promise you this gets so much better. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you do if you got this message? Would you cry? Would you fight? Would you plan? Let me know, because I want to hear from you. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare actually began. I met Dominic Thorne 12 years ago at a charity gala in Boston. I was 26, a newly licensed architect trying to make a name for myself in a male-dominated industry. He was 30, charming, successful in finance, and he made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. We dated for 2 years before he proposed with a stunning ring at the top of the Prudential Tower. I thought I'd found my forever. What I didn't know then was that Dominic saw me as an investment, not a partner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first 5 years of our marriage were good, or at least I thought they were. I was building my career working 16-hour days on residential projects, slowly making a name for myself. Dominic supported me, or so I believed. He'd bring me coffee at my home office, kiss my forehead when I worked late, and tell everyone how proud he was of his architect wife. Meanwhile, his finance career was stagnating. He'd been passed over for partner twice, and I watched him grow increasingly bitter about colleagues he claimed were less talented getting promoted over him. That's when my parents started getting involved in ways that should have raised red flags. My mother, Eleanor, had always been critical. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. My interior design choices were too modern, my career too demanding, my hosting skills lacking. But when Dominic started struggling professionally, her criticism took on a new edge. She'd make comments at family dinners about how a wife should support her husband, how perhaps I was too focused on my own ambitions. My father, Arthur, would nod along, silent as always when Eleanor spoke. My sister, Serena, 3 years older than me, had married a doctor and stayed home with her 2 kids. She became Mom's golden child, the example I should follow. My younger brother, Leo, fresh out of business school, sided with whoever would fund his startup dreams. And I stupidly kept trying to win their approval by being more, doing more, giving more. 6 years into my marriage, I got my big break. A tech entrepreneur hired me to design his dream home, a cutting-edge smart house integrated with every possible technology. It was my masterpiece, my proof that I belonged among the elite architects of Boston. The project took 2 years and launched my reputation into the stratosphere. Suddenly, I wasn't just another architect. I was Victoria Vance, the woman who could blend technology with livable luxury. That's when I made the smartest and simultaneously most dangerous decision of my life. I established an LLC, Vance Design Properties, and I registered that smart home under the company's name. I did it for tax purposes, for liability protection, for all the smart business reasons my accountant recommended. Dominic signed off on it without reading the paperwork. He was too busy being resentful that my career had eclipsed his. We moved into that house 7 years ago. It was everything I'd dreamed of. Voice-activated systems, automated climate control, security cameras in every room. Smart glass that tinted based on sunlight, a kitchen that could practically cook for you. I'd spent 3 years designing it, another year building it, and I loved it more than anything I'd ever created. Dominic loved it too, but for different reasons. He loved showing it off to his friends, hosting parties where he could pretend he'd achieved something impressive, using my success as social currency. My family loved it even more. Suddenly, Sunday dinners had to be at our house. Holidays had to be at our house. My mother would invite her friends over for tea in my living room, taking credit for raising such a successful daughter, while simultaneously criticizing how I'd arranged the furniture. Serena would drop her kids off for me to babysit because, you have all this space and no children, you might as well make yourself useful. Leo borrowed money constantly for his failing ventures, promising to pay me back, but never doing so. And I let it happen. I let them walk all over me because I thought that's what family did. I thought if I just gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally see my worth. I thought Dominic would remember why he'd married me. I thought my mother would finally say she was proud. I thought my siblings would appreciate me. I was so catastrophically wrong. The cracks started showing about 3 years ago. Dominic began working late more often. He'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, but he'd explain it away as a colleague's fragrance in a crowded elevator. He started criticizing my appearance, suggesting I should work out more dress, more feminine, be more available. He complained that I was always working, ignoring the fact that my income was supporting both of us since his career had plateaued. Then, Scarlett entered the picture. She was new to Boston, a corporate lawyer who'd just made partner at a prestigious firm downtown. We met at a networking event, and I genuinely liked her. She was sharp, funny, ambitious. We became friends quickly. I introduced her to Dominic at a dinner party I hosted. I watched them talk about finance and law, noticed how her laugh was a little too bright at his jokes, how his attention lingered a little too long on her face. But I pushed those observations down. I trusted my husband. I trusted my friend. I was the woman who had everything, wasn't I? A successful career, a beautiful home, a handsome husband, a close family. Surely I was just being paranoid, letting my work stress create problems where none existed. Over the next year, Scarlett became a fixture in our lives. She'd join us for dinners, come to family gatherings, vacation with us and my parents. My mother adored her. Eleanor would constantly compare us, pointing out how Scarlett always looked so polished, how she managed her career without seeming stressed, how she made time for relationships. Serena bonded with her over wine and complaints about how demanding I'd become. Even Leo liked her because she gave him free legal advice for his businesses. I was being replaced in my own life, and I was too busy working to notice the coup happening around my own dinner table. The surveillance system in my smart house recorded everything. I'd designed it that way for security, never imagining I'd need security from the people I loved. But 3 months ago, I was reviewing footage to troubleshoot a technical glitch, and I found it. Dominic and Scarlett in my kitchen late at night when I was supposedly at a client meeting. They weren't just talking, they were planning. I sat in my home office, my hands trembling as I watched my husband kiss another woman in the kitchen I'd designed. But worse than the kiss were the words. "Once I get the money from refinancing this place, we can leave sooner," Dominic said, stroking Scarlett's hair. "She'll never know until it's too late. The house is in her company's name, but I'm still her husband. I can get access." Scarlett laughed a sound I'd heard 1,000 times over coffee and friendship. "What about her family? Won't they cause problems?" "Are you kidding?" Dominic's voice was cold, calculating. "Eleanor can't stand her. None of them can. They're already on our side. Why do you think I've been playing the struggling husband card? They eat it up. Poor Dominic married to a workaholic who doesn't appreciate him. They'll support us completely." I watched that footage 4 times before I could process what I was seeing. Then I went through the entire security system archives. There were dozens of recordings. Dominic and Scarlett meeting in my home when I was at work. My mother having tea with Scarlett discussing how I'd let myself go, how I didn't deserve Dominic. Serena and Scarlett giggling about how I was too obsessed with my career to notice what was happening under my own roof. My father saying nothing as always, just nodding along with Eleanor's poison. They'd been planning this for months. A full-scale betrayal orchestrated in my own house, funded by my own success, enabled by my own blind trust. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I called Cassandra Stone, a lawyer I'd worked with on several high-profile projects. Cassie had a reputation in Boston's legal circles, brilliant, ruthless, and completely loyal to her clients. When I told her what I'd found, there was a long pause on the phone. "Vicky," she said finally, her voice careful. "What exactly do you want to do here?" "I want to file for divorce immediately," I said, my voice steady. "And I need a demolition crew, a good one, the best one." Another pause. Then Cassie laughed, a sharp sound of approval. "You're not just leaving him, are you?" "No," I said, looking out at my beautiful home, every corner of it tainted now with betrayal. "I'm erasing him. I'm erasing all of them." "I assume you have evidence of the fraud he was attempting, the attempted refinancing." "I have everything." Video, audio, emails I pulled from his laptop when he left it open. He tried to forge my signature on a second mortgage application. That's a felony. "Good," Cassie said, and I could hear her already typing. "Give me 48 hours. I'll have divorce papers ready with fraud charges, asset freezing, and criminal referrals. As for the demolition, I know someone. But Vicky, are you sure about this? That house is worth $10 million. "The house is worth nothing if every room reminds me of how stupid I was," I said. "Besides, I already have a buyer lined up. Sterling Investments has been trying to buy this lot for 2 years to build a luxury condo complex. They offered $12 million last month." Cassie whistled. "You've been planning this." "No," I corrected. "I've been hoping I was wrong, but I spent the last 3 days making calls just in case I was right." I was right. The next 2 days were a blur of cold, calculated action. I worked from my downtown office instead of home, telling Dominic I had a major client deadline. He seemed relieved, probably because it gave him more time with Scarlett. I spent those days gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Bank statements showing Dominic had been siphoning money from our joint account into a secret account under his and Scarlett's names. Email chains between Dominic and a shady mortgage broker discussing how to forge my signature. Text messages between Scarlett and my mother with Eleanor coaching her on how to support Dominic when the divorce happened. My mother, the woman who gave birth to me, was actively helping my husband's mistress prepare to replace me. That discovery hurt worse than the affair itself. Cassie filed the divorce papers on a Monday morning, along with an emergency motion to freeze all of Dominic's assets and a criminal referral for attempted fraud. She also filed a restraining order preventing him from accessing any of my properties or assets. The papers would be waiting at his office when he returned from Croatia. But that was just the legal foundation. The real work began on Tuesday. I called Jackson Miller at 6 a.m. Jackson ran the most respected demolition company in New England, known for precise, controlled demolitions that left salvageable materials intact and turned everything else to dust. He was also notoriously selective about his jobs. "Ms. Vance," he said when he answered, sounding surprised. "I know your work. That smart home you built is legendary in construction circles. What can I do for you?" "I need you to tear it down," I said simply. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" "The house at 847 Commonwealth Avenue, my house. I need it demolished and I need it done in 3 days." "Ms. Vance, even if I wanted to take this job, which I'm not sure I do, you can't get demolition permits in 3 days. The city requires environmental assessments, utility disconnections, neighborhood notifications." "I have all of that," I interrupted. "I've been preparing for this for months. I have every permit, every clearance, every signature. I'll email you the documentation in the next hour." "Mr. Miller, I designed that house. I know every beam, every wire, every pipe. I can give you a complete demolition plan that will take 2 days instead of 2 weeks. And I'll pay you $300,000 to do it." Another pause. "That's more than double my usual fee for a project this size." "I know, but I need it done before Friday, and I need it done perfectly. Can you do it?" I heard him exhale. "Send me the documents. If everything's in order, I'll have my crew there Wednesday morning." The documents were in order. I'd spent the last 2 months quietly obtaining every necessary permit using every connection I'd built in 12 years of architecture. I'd told city officials I was planning to sell the property for redevelopment, which was true. I'd arranged for utility disconnections. I'd notified neighbors claiming structural issues required immediate demolition for safety reasons, which wasn't true, but nobody questioned a certified architect's assessment. Wednesday morning, I stood across the street from my beautiful home and watched Jackson's crew arrive. He walked up to me, studying my face. "Ms. Vance, I have to ask, are you absolutely certain about this? This house is a masterpiece." "It was a masterpiece," I corrected. "Now it's just a crime scene." He nodded slowly. "All right then, let's bring it down." I watched them work for 2 solid days. They were fast, efficient, and thorough. First went the smart glass windows, carefully removed and salvaged. Then the solar panels from the roof, the custom cabinets from the kitchen. Everything that could be sold was cataloged and loaded onto trucks. I'd already contracted with an auction house to sell it all another few $100,000 to add to my fresh start fund. Then came the real demolition. Heavy machinery rolled in, and piece by piece my home came apart. The walls I'd designed, the rooms I'd furnished, the spaces where I'd naively believed I was building a life with someone who loved me. It all crumbled into rubble. My mother called 17 times during those 2 days. I didn't answer. Serena sent increasingly frantic texts asking where I was and why I wasn't answering Mom's calls. I ignored them. Leo tried to reach me about another investment opportunity, oblivious as always to anything that didn't directly benefit him. I blocked him. The only person I talked to was Maya Chen, my real best friend from college, who'd moved to San Francisco years ago but had always been there when I needed her. I called her Wednesday night from a hotel room downtown. "I demolished my house today," I told her. Maya, bless her, didn't even sound surprised. "The smart home, your masterpiece." "The crime scene where my husband and my family planned to rob me blind," I corrected. "Maya, they were all in on it, every single one of them." "I know, honey. I've been waiting for you to figure it out for 2 years. You knew." "I suspected. Every time you talked about Dominic, you sounded more tired. Every time you mentioned your mother, you sounded more hollow. I couldn't prove anything, so I just waited for you to see it yourself. I'm sorry it took something this bad." "Don't be sorry," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "I'm not. I mean, I'm devastated, but I'm not sorry. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something right." "What's the plan now?" "They come back from Croatia on Friday. I'm going to be there when they see what's left." Maya laughed sharp and approving. "Vicky Vance, you beautiful, terrifying woman. Give them hell." By Thursday afternoon, my house was gone. In its place was a cleared lot topsoil, laid down grass, seed planted. Jackson had even arranged for sod on the portions visible from the street. It looked like nothing had ever been there at all, just an empty lot waiting for development. The Sterling Investments representative met me there Thursday evening to finalize the sale. He was a young guy, probably 30, in an expensive suit that screamed new money. "Ms. Vance, this is remarkable," he said, looking at the cleared land. "We expected to handle demolition ourselves. This saves us months of permitting." "I'm an architect," I said simply. "I know how to tear things down as well as build them up. The paperwork is all in order, title is clear. You can break ground on your condo project next month." We signed the papers right there, standing on the grass that had been my driveway 3 days ago. $12 million transferred to my account. I'd sold my marriage, my naivety, and my family's betrayal for $12 million and my freedom. Friday morning, I woke up in my hotel room and put on my armor. A charcoal Armani suit that had cost $3,000, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's pearl earrings, the only family heirloom I actually cared about. I did my makeup carefully, hair pulled back in a sleek bun. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful woman who had her shit together. I drove to what used to be my address around noon, parking across the street. I'd timed it perfectly. I knew their flight landed at 10, knew they'd need an hour to get through customs and baggage claim, another hour to drive from Logan Airport to Brookline. They'd be arriving right about now. Sure enough, at 12:15, 2 black SUVs pulled onto Commonwealth Avenue. I recognized the rental company logos. I watched Dominic driving the first one, my mother in the passenger seat. My father, Serena, and Leo were in the second vehicle, with Scarlett driving. They were laughing. I could see them through the windows, still riding high on whatever fantasy they'd built in Croatia. Probably planning how they'd kick me out of my own house, how they'd divide up my assets, how I'd be the pathetic abandoned wife while Dominic rode off into the sunset with his new woman and my money. The first SUV slowed, then stopped in the middle of the street. The second one pulled up behind it. I watched Dominic's face change from confusion to shock to something approaching panic. He jumped out of the car, leaving the door open, and just stood there on the asphalt staring at the empty lot where his meal ticket used to be. My mother got out next, her face contorting in that familiar expression of displeasure that used to make me anxious. Now it just made me smile. Serena, Leo, and my father emerged from the second SUV. Scarlett came last, her face pale, clearly understanding before the others what this meant. I gave them 30 seconds to process. 30 seconds to stand there surrounded by their luggage, their Croatian tans fading in the Boston autumn sun, staring at the empty lot that represented the complete destruction of their plans. Then I got out of my car. I walked across the street at a leisurely pace, my heels clicking on the pavement. I stopped about 10 feet away from them, took a sip from the iced coffee I'd been holding, and smiled. "Welcome home," I said pleasantly. Dominic whirled around, his face flushed. "Vicky, what the hell did you do? Where's the house?" "The house?" I tilted my head as if considering the question. "Oh, you mean my house? The one registered to my company, the one I designed, built, and paid for entirely on my own, that house." "Our house," he snarled, taking a step toward me. "We live there." "Lived," I corrected. Past tense. You lived there, Dominic, as a guest, in a property owned by Vance Design Properties, LLC, of which I am the sole owner and operator. You might remember signing the papers acknowledging that fact 5 years ago. Of course you didn't read them because you were too busy planning your next Finance Bro networking event. My mother found her voice shrill and accusing. "Victoria Elaine Vance, what have you done? This is family property." I turned to face her, and I felt something shift inside me. All those years of seeking her approval, of trying to be good enough, of accepting her criticism and her manipulations just fell away. I looked at her, this woman who gave birth to me but never actually loved me, and I felt nothing but cold contempt. "Family property," I repeated. "Mom, I have 12 years of bank statements, receipts, and tax returns proving that I paid for every single thing in that house. You didn't contribute a dime, you just consumed. You dadded Serena and Leo. You all just took and took and took, and you called it family." "We supported you," Serena snapped, stepping forward with Leo beside her. "We were there for you. Were you—" I pulled out my phone, opened a spreadsheet I'd prepared. "Let's talk about support, shall we? Serena, I've loaned you $67,000 over the last 8 years for your kids' activities, your kitchen renovation, and that time Dan's practice was struggling. You've repaid $0 and 0 cents. Leo, you've borrowed $93,000 for 3 different startups, all of which failed. Also, $0 repaid." Leo's face went red. "Those were investments, not loans. Funny because I have signed promissory notes from you calling them loans. But sure, let's call them investments. How's my return? What's my equity stake in your current venture? Oh wait, you told me I couldn't be an investor in that one because I wouldn't understand the tech. So, which is it, Leo? Am I an investor or a bank?" "Your family," he shouted. "Family helps each other." "Does family help each other?" I looked at each of them in turn. "Is that what you all were doing in Croatia, helping each other? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were all celebrating the fact that Dominic was about to commit fraud against me, and you were all complicit." The silence was deafening. My father, who hadn't said a word yet, looked down at his shoes. Scarlett had gone completely white. Dominic recovered first, his shock transforming into anger. "You had no right to demolish that house. That's destruction of marital property. My lawyer will—" "Huh, your lawyer will what?" I interrupted. "Will tell you that the house was never marital property because it wasn't. It was corporate property owned by my LLC, which you have no stake in. Or maybe your lawyer will explain that you're actually in massive legal trouble for attempting to fraudulently obtain a second mortgage on property you don't own using my forged signature. That's a felony, Dominic. Multiple felonies, actually." His face went from red to pale in an instant. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I tapped my phone and held it up. My voice, his voice, Scarlett's voice played from the speaker, the conversation I'd recorded from my security system. "Once I get the money from refinancing this place, we can leave sooner. She'll never know until it's too late." I watched Scarlett grab Dominic's arm, her nails digging in. I watched my mother's mouth open and close like a fish. I watched my father finally look up, shame written all over his face. "I have hours of recordings," I continued conversationally. "My house was a smart home. Everything was recorded all the time for security purposes." I have you and Scarlett planning fraud. I have emails between you and a mortgage broker discussing falsifying my signature. I have text messages between Scarlett and my mother discussing how to manage me during the divorce. I have bank records showing you've been transferring money from our joint account to a secret account. I have everything, Dominic, and I've given all of it to the FBI. The FBI, his voice cracked. Wire fraud, bank fraud, attempted identity theft. These are federal crimes. My lawyer, Cassandra Stone, has been very thorough. I smiled at Scarlett. She's very good at her job. You might know her, actually. She made partner at Morrison & Black last year, handles high-profile financial crimes. Scarlett looked like she might be sick. She probably knew exactly who Cassie was and what her reputation meant. As for the house, I continued, turning back to Dominic. I sold it. Well, I sold the land. To Sterling Investments. They're breaking ground on a luxury condo complex next month. The sale closed yesterday for $12 million. Every penny went into accounts you have no access to. $12 million. My mother's voice was faint. You sold it for $12 million. I did. Turns out when you own property outright and can provide immediate cleared land with all permits in place, buyers will pay a premium. I looked at her directly. Don't worry, Mom. None of that money is family property either. It's corporate revenue from the sale of corporate assets, totally separate from any marital estate, which is good because the marital estate is about negative $200,000 after accounting for Dominic's debts and the money he stole. You can't do this, Eleanor said, but her voice had lost its imperious edge. She sounded almost pleading. Vicky, we're your family. You can't just abandon us. Something inside me that had been cracked and bleeding for years finally sealed over scar tissue forming. You're right, Mom. I can't abandon you. Because you have to be there for someone first before you can abandon them. You were never there for me. You were there for the house, for the money, for the social status of having a successful daughter you could parade around while simultaneously tearing down. But me, the actual person, you never gave a damn about me. That's not true, she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. It is true, and you know what I'm done trying to convince you otherwise. I'm done trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it. I turned to my father. Dad, you want to say anything? You've been quiet this whole time, which is pretty much your standard operating procedure. Arthur Vance looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw actual emotion on his face. Shame. Regret something that might have been love buried under years of passive complicity. Vicky, I'm sorry. Your mother, she can be very persuasive, and I should have stood up for you more. I should have seen what was happening. Yeah, I said softly. You should have, but you didn't, and now it's too late. It's not too late, he said quickly. We can fix this. I can talk to Eleanor, we can go to counseling, we can… Dad, I interrupted gently. I don't want to fix this. I want to be free of it. I pulled an envelope from my purse and handed it to him. Not to Eleanor, not to anyone else. Just to my father. These are the divorce papers Cassie filed on Monday. Dominic, you'll find your copy waiting at your office, along with a restraining order preventing you from contacting me or accessing any of my properties. The court has frozen all your assets pending investigation of the fraud charges. You'll have a hearing in 2 weeks. Dominic's legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard on the curb, his head in his hands. Scarlett stood frozen, looking like she wanted to run but couldn't make her legs work. As for the rest of you, I continued, looking at my mother and siblings, I'm done. I'm done being your ATM. I'm done being your emotional punching bag. I'm done being the family disappointment who somehow also funds everyone's lifestyle. I'm just done. Where are you going to go? Serena asked, and she sounded genuinely confused, like she couldn't conceive of me having a life outside of my utility to her. I bought a penthouse in Back Bay last week. 3 bedrooms, gorgeous views of the city, and absolutely no memories of any of you. I'm also expanding my firm. Turns out when you're not supporting 5 adult freeloaders, you have a lot of capital to invest in your own business. You're being cruel, Eleanor said, and now she was crying probably for the first time in years. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a woman realizing her cash cow had just walked away. I'm being honest, I corrected. There's a difference. Cruelty is what you all did to me. Planning behind my back, celebrating my replacement, treating me like I was the problem when all I ever did was love you and try to make you happy. Honesty is me telling you that I see you now. I see exactly who you are, and I don't like what I see. I checked my watch, a Cartier I'd bought myself last week. I have a meeting with my lawyer in an hour, so I should go. But before I do, there's one more thing. I looked at Dominic, who was still sitting on the curb, looking shell-shocked. That text message you sent me from Croatia, "Don't be at the house when we get back. Once it's old, it's dead in my eyes." I thought about that a lot over the last few days. And you know what? You're right. Once something's old, once it's lost its value, once it's only causing pain, it should die. So I killed it. The house, the marriage, the family dynamic that was slowly killing me. I tore it all down, and I don't regret a single moment of it. I started walking back to my car, then paused and turned around one last time. Oh, and Dominic, I heard the Holiday Inn on Route 9 has vacancies. You should call them. All 7 of you are going to need somewhere to stay tonight, and trust me, none of you can afford the 4 seasons. I got in my car and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw them standing there in a cluster surrounded by their luggage and their shattered plans. 7 people who thought they could use me, betray me, discard me, and face no consequences. 7 people who learned the hard way that architects don't just build things. We also know exactly how to tear them down. The next few months were brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. The divorce proceeded quickly once the criminal investigation started. Dominic's lawyer tried to argue for a share of my business, but Cassie destroyed him in court with evidence of the attempted fraud. The judge was not sympathetic to a man who'd tried to steal from his wife. In the end, Dominic got nothing. Not my business, not my money, not even spousal support. The prenup I'd insisted on 12 years ago, which he'd signed without reading, was airtight. The criminal charges moved forward. Dominic was indicted on 3 counts of fraud and 1 count of identity theft. He took a plea deal rather than go to trial, which resulted in 2 years probation, a $100,000 fine he couldn't pay, and a felony record that destroyed what remained of his finance career. Scarlett lost her position at her law firm. Turns out corporate law firms don't love it when their partners are involved in criminal conspiracies. She moved back to wherever she came from originally. I didn't care enough to find out where. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. My mother called 67 times in the first week alone. I know because I counted before blocking her number. Her voicemails were a roller coaster of emotions, starting with screaming accusations that I was an ungrateful, heartless daughter who'd destroyed the family. Then came the weeping messages about how she'd sacrificed everything for me. How could I abandon her in her old age? By day 5, she was threatening to sue me for elder abuse, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. I deleted every single message without listening all the way through. When I didn't respond, Eleanor got creative. She showed up at my new building in Back Bay on a Tuesday morning, dressed in her best victim outfit, complete with tissues clutched in her hand. I watched from my penthouse window as she argued with Marcus, my building's doorman, a former Marine who took his job very seriously. She tried tears first, explaining she was my poor abandoned mother who just wanted to see her daughter. When that didn't work, she tried indignation, demanding to know who he thought he was keeping a mother from her child. Marcus didn't budge. He'd already been briefed by building management that Eleanor Vance was not to be admitted under any circumstances. I'd tipped him $100 for his trouble, worth every penny to watch her storm off in defeat. But Eleanor wasn't done. She started calling my clients, or at least trying to. She somehow got hold of my business contacts and began a whisper campaign designed to destroy my reputation. She told people I was mentally unstable, that I'd demolished my own home in a psychotic break, that I was dangerous and unpredictable. She painted herself as the concerned mother trying to warn innocent people about her unhinged daughter. It backfired so spectacularly that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My clients weren't idiots. These were sophisticated, wealthy people who'd hired me because of my talent, my precision, my absolute mastery of both design and business. When they heard Eleanor's stories, they didn't think I was crazy. They thought she was. Several of them called me directly to let me know what was happening and to assure me it wouldn't affect our professional relationships. One client, a tech CEO named Patricia, who'd commissioned a $15 million project, actually increased her contract as a show of support. She told me that anyone who could design a $10 million smart home and then strategically demolish and sell it for a $2 million profit while simultaneously destroying her enemies was exactly the kind of strategic thinker she wanted designing her compound. The architecture community rallied around me too. Word spread quickly about what had happened, not because I told anyone, but because Dominic's arrest for fraud made the local business news. Suddenly, I wasn't the crazy woman who demolished her own house. I was the badass architect who'd outsmarted her con artist husband and sold the evidence for $12 million. My phone started ringing with new project inquiries. My consultation fees tripled because demand outpaced my availability. Eleanor's smear campaign had accidentally turned me into an urban legend. Now, before I tell you what happened with my siblings and father, I need you to do something for me. If you're loving this story of someone who refused to be a victim, who turned betrayal into triumph, who proved that the best revenge is building a better life, then smash that like button right now. And listen, I know you're probably watching this while doing something else, but take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. Why? Because I share stories like this every week. Stories about people who chose themselves when everyone else chose against them. Stories about standing up to toxic families, manipulative partners, and anyone who thinks they can use you without consequences. And drop a comment telling me this. Would you have demolished the house, or would you have done something different? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you would do in my situation. Also, if you've ever dealt with a toxic family member, type the word freedom in the comments. Let's build a community of people who understand that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. All right, now back to the story. Serena's approach was different from Eleanor's, but equally manipulative. She didn't call. Instead, she sent emails. Long, eloquent, guilt-soaked emails that could have been titled, "How to Emotionally Manipulate Your Sister in 5,000 Words or Less." The first one arrived 3 days after the confrontation. Subject line, "Please, we need to talk." The email detailed how I was tearing the family apart, how my actions had devastated everyone, how her children, my niece Emma and nephew Jackson, were crying every night, asking why Aunt Vicky didn't love them anymore. She described in painful detail how she'd tried to explain to her 8-year-old daughter that sometimes adults make selfish choices that hurt the people who love them. She asked how I could be so cruel, so heartless, so willing to punish innocent children for the mistakes of adults. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. Every sentence carefully crafted to make me feel like a monster. Every paragraph designed to trigger my guilt and my love for my niece and nephew. The old Vicky, the one who'd spent 12 years trying to earn her family's approval, would have crumbled. She would have called Serena immediately apologizing, explaining, trying to fix it. The new Vicky Reddit once recognized every manipulation tactic and hit block. Then I changed my email address and my phone number. I wasn't going to debate my right to protect myself. I wasn't going to justify my boundaries. I was just going to enforce them. Serena tried 4 more times through different email addresses. Each message got more desperate, more accusatory. By the final one, she'd dropped the pretense of caring about my well-being and showed her true colors. She was furious that I'd cut off her access to money to my home, to the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to funding on my dime. She called me selfish, bitter, vindictive. She said I was punishing everyone because I couldn't keep my husband happy. She said I'd die alone and miserable and no one would care. I forwarded that email to my therapist as an example of what I was dealing with, then blocked that address too. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chin, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family trauma, read it during our next session and actually laughed. "Well," she said, "at least she's being honest now. That's almost refreshing." Leo took a different approach entirely. He tried to reach me through my professional website, through my business email, through my LinkedIn. Every message was the same: a new startup idea, a new investment opportunity, a new way for me to fund his dreams while he took all the credit and all the profit. He seemed genuinely confused about why I wasn't responding. In his mind, our relationship was purely transactional, and the transaction should continue regardless of minor details like him supporting my husband's fraud and celebrating my replacement. I had my assistant Jamie send him a form letter that she'd crafted with barely concealed glee. "Vance Design Studio has reviewed your investment proposal and determined it does not align with our current business objectives." We wish you success in your future endeavors. Please note that Vance Design Studio does not accept unsolicited business proposals from family members of the principal. Any future communications of this nature will be directed to our legal department. Sincerely, Victoria Vance, Principal Architect. Jamie told me later that Leo called the office 6 times trying to get through to me after receiving that letter. She took great pleasure in repeating the same message each time. Ms. Vance is unavailable, and as stated in our previous communication, we're not accepting proposals from you. Have a nice day. On the 7th call, she told him that continued contact would be considered harassment and we'd pursue legal remedies. He finally stopped. But my father was different. Arthur didn't call constantly or send manipulative emails or show up at my office. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from him at all, and I assumed he'd chosen Eleanor's side like he always had. I assumed he was just another casualty of my decision to choose myself, another relationship sacrificed on the altar of my freedom. Then, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after that confrontation on Commonwealth Avenue, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was simple, "From your father." I almost deleted it, assuming it was another manipulation, another attempt to guilt me back into the fold. But something made me open it. Vicky, I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness. I know I failed you as a father in every way that matters. I stood by silently while your mother criticized you, manipulated you, and used you. I watched Dominic take advantage of your kindness and said nothing. I participated in the celebration of your betrayal because it was easier than standing up to Eleanor. I chose comfort over courage, silence over support, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I just want you to know that I've filed for legal separation from your mother. I can't fix the past, but I can stop enabling the present. I moved out last week. I'm renting a small apartment in Cambridge and teaching English at Bunker Hill Community College. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work, and for the first time in 35 years, I feel like myself. I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. What you did took more courage than I've shown in my entire life. You saw the truth, you acted on it, and you saved yourself. That's extraordinary. I'm not asking for a relationship or for forgiveness or for anything at all. I just needed you to know that I see what I did, and I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Love, Dad. I sat in my office, rain pattering against the windows, reading that email over and over. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as another manipulation, another attempt to worm back into my life so the family could resume using me. But it didn't feel like manipulation. It felt like genuine remorse. It felt like accountability. And most importantly, it felt like my father was finally choosing to save himself, not asking me to save him. I stared at that email for 40 minutes, my coffee going cold on my desk, trying to figure out how I felt. Angry. Yes, but less than I expected. Sad, definitely. Hopeful. Maybe, cautiously. My father had spent 35 years being Eleanor's enabler, her silent supporter, her partner in every dysfunction. For him to finally break free to choose integrity over comfort, that meant something. I drafted and deleted 6 responses before I finally settled on the right words. Dad, I appreciate you taking accountability. I'm not ready to have you back in my life yet, but I'm not closing that door forever. I need time to heal, but maybe someday we can have coffee, just the 2 of us. Vicky. He didn't push. He sent a simple reply. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. That was 6 months ago. Since then, my father and I have met for coffee 3 times. They were awkward, halting conversations where we both tried to navigate the wreckage of our relationship. But there was something genuine there, something that hadn't existed when Eleanor was controlling every family interaction. I learned that my father had his own dreams once, that he'd wanted to be a teacher, but Eleanor had pushed him into corporate law for the money and status. I learned that he'd been unhappy for decades but didn't know how to leave. My situation had somehow given him permission to save himself too. We're not close yet. Maybe we never will be. But there's a possibility of something real, which is more than I ever had before. As for me, I threw myself into rebuilding. Not just my life, but my purpose. I used part of the money from the house sale to establish the Vance Foundation for Women in Architecture. We provide scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for female architects who want to start their own firms. In the first 6 months, we helped 12 women launch their careers. Watching them succeed, watching them avoid the traps I fell into, gave me more satisfaction than that smart home ever did. My firm expanded too. I hired 3 junior architects, all women, all brilliant, all hungry to prove themselves in an industry that still tries to keep us in supporting roles. We took on projects that excited me, homes and buildings that pushed boundaries, that told stories that meant something beyond their price tags. And I made time for myself. Real time, not just the exhausted gaps between work and family obligations. I took a pottery class and discovered I was terrible at it, but I loved the feeling of clay in my hands, the way you could smash something and start over. I traveled to Japan to study architectural design and fell in love with the concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and impermanence. I went to therapy, real therapy, and started unpacking decades of emotional abuse and people-pleasing. Maya flew out to visit me twice. The second time, she brought her girlfriend Rachel, and the 3 of us spent a weekend eating good food, drinking better wine, and laughing about everything and nothing. It was the first time I could remember feeling purely happy in years. No anxiety about whether I was doing enough, being enough, giving enough. Just happiness. I also reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, people I'd drifted away from because Dominic didn't like them or because family obligations took precedence. Turns out, when you're not spending all your emotional energy on people who don't appreciate you, you have plenty left for people who do. The new penthouse became my sanctuary. I decorated it exactly how I wanted with none of Eleanor's input or Dominic's opinions. Bold colors, unusual art furniture that was comfortable rather than impressive. I had a whole room just for my drafting table and design work windows overlooking the Boston skyline. Some mornings I'd wake up, make coffee, and just sit in that room watching the sun rise over the city, feeling grateful for the peace I'd fought so hard to claim. I dated a little nothing serious. A few dinners, some good conversations, one brief fling with a visiting architect from London that was fun while it lasted. But I wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in my adult life, I was learning to be happy alone, to find my worth in myself, rather than in someone else's validation. It was harder than I expected and more rewarding than I imagined. About 8 months after that confrontation on Commonwealth Avenue, I got a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it automatically, assuming it was another attempt from my family to guilt-trip me. But something made me open it. "Vicky, it's Dominic. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness. But I've been in therapy working through my issues, and my therapist suggested I reach out to make amends. I'm sorry for everything I did to you. I'm sorry for the lies, the betrayal, the fraud. I'm sorry for not seeing your value when I had the chance. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know that I take full responsibility for destroying our marriage and hurting you. I hope you're doing well." I read it 3 times, looked for the manipulation, the angle, the hidden agenda, but it just seemed sad and genuine, the words of a man who'd lost everything and was finally understanding why. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, triumphant, but mostly I just felt tired. I didn't respond. Not because I was still angry, but because I didn't owe him my forgiveness or my emotional labor. His healing was his responsibility, not mine. I'd spent too many years managing other people's feelings. I was done with that. Instead, I blocked the number and went back to designing a community center for a nonprofit in Dorchester. They had a tiny budget and a huge vision, and I was doing it pro bono because it mattered more than another millionaire's second home. A few weeks later, I was having coffee with my father at a small cafe in Cambridge. We'd progressed from awkward silences to actual conversations. He was telling me about his new apartment, his new job teaching English at a community college, his new life. "Your mother is furious that I'm meeting with you," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "She called me a traitor, said I was choosing you over family." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her that choosing you is choosing family, that she's the one who broke the family when she decided loving you was conditional on you serving her needs." He looked up at me. "She didn't take it well." "I imagine not." I took a sip of my latte. "How are Serena and Leo?" "Struggling. Serena's marriage is in trouble. Turns out Dan resents her too, all the spending, all the entitlement. He's tired of funding a lifestyle they can't afford. And Leo's latest startup failed. He's living with your mother now, which I'm sure is delightful for both of them." I felt a small pang of something. Not quite sympathy, but not satisfaction either. just a sad recognition that the patterns that destroyed our family were eating them alive, too. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I asked. My father was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. Your mother has spent 63 years believing the world owes her something. Serena learned that same entitlement. Leo thinks he's owed success without work. Those are hard beliefs to change." He paused. "But I think about it differently now. It's not about whether they understand. It's about whether you're free. And you are, aren't you?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. Was I free? Free from the obligation to fix them, save them, fund them, earn their approval. Free from the weight of being the family disappointment and the family ATM simultaneously. Free from the pain of loving people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. "Yes," I said finally. "I am." "Then that's all that matters." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching students hurry past the cafe windows wrapped in scarves against the November cold. It was almost a year since that text message from Croatia, almost a year since I'd demolished my prison and walked away from my jailers. "I'm proud of you, Vicky," my father said quietly. "I know I said it before, but I need you to really hear it. What you did took more courage than anything I've ever done. You saw the truth, you acted on it, and you saved yourself. That's extraordinary." Tears pricked my eyes, unexpected and warm. "Thanks, Dad. I mean it. I spent 35 years in a marriage that made me miserable because I was too scared to leave. You spent 12 years trying to make an impossible situation work, and when you finally saw it was impossible, you didn't just leave. You burned it down and built something better from the ashes. That's not just courage, that's artistry." I laughed, wiping my eyes. "Only you would call demolishing a $10 million house artistry." "You're an architect," he said with a small smile. "You understand that destruction and creation are part of the same process. Sometimes you have to clear the foundation before you can build something that lasts." After coffee, I drove to my office in the Seaport District. My firm had grown enough that we'd moved out of my home office and into a real space with real employees. Walking in every day still gave me a thrill. The sign outside read, "Vance Design Studio" in elegant letters. Inside, my 3 junior architects were bent over drafting tables and computer screens working on projects that mattered. "Vicky, you have a visitor," my assistant Jamie said as I walked in. She looked uncertain. "She said she's your sister." My stomach tightened. "Tell her I'm not available." "I already tried. She's pretty insistent. She says it's important." I took a breath. "Fine. Give me 5 minutes, then send her to my office." I used those 5 minutes to center myself, to remember who I was now, not who I'd been. When Serena walked into my office, I barely recognized her. She'd always been polished, put together, the golden child with the perfect life. Now she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, clothes that were expensive but wrinkled hair that needed a touch-up. "Vicky," she said, and her voice cracked. "Thank you for seeing me. You have 10 minutes?" I said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "What do you want, Serena?" She sat down in the chair across from my desk, and to my surprise, she started crying. Not delicate tears, but ugly, gasping sobs. I sat there uncomfortable, waiting. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. "I'm so sorry for everything. You were right about all of it. Dan is leaving me. He said he can't take my constant spending, my constant need for more, my inability to appreciate what we have. He said I'm just like Mom, and he's not wrong." I didn't say anything. I'd learned that silence was often the best response. Leo moved in with Mom because his girlfriend kicked him out. Turns out she was tired of funding his dreams too. And Mom, she's alone now except for Leo, and she's miserable. She calls me constantly complaining, criticizing, and I finally understand what you went through for years. Serena looked up at me, mascara streaking her face. "I let her poison me against you. I let her make me think you were the problem when you were the only one holding everything together. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." Part of me wanted to hold on to my anger to tell her it was too late, that sorry didn't fix 12 years of betrayal. But a bigger part of me was just tired of carrying that weight. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "But you understand that an apology doesn't mean everything goes back to normal, right? You can be sorry, and I can accept that, and we can still not have a relationship." "I know," she whispered. "I'm not asking to be your sister again. I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, and I'm ashamed." "Good," I said, and her head snapped up at the hardness in my voice. "You should be ashamed. You should sit with that shame and let it teach you something. Let it teach you that people aren't resources, that love isn't conditional, that family shouldn't be a hierarchy where some people give and others just take." "I'm trying," she said. "I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be better for my kids to not pass this dysfunction down to them." "That's good, Serena. Genuinely, that's good. Your kids deserve better than what we got." I leaned forward. "But here's the thing. Your healing isn't my responsibility. Your growth isn't my project. You and Leo and Mom, you all spent years making me responsible for your happiness, your financial security, your emotional regulation. I'm not doing that anymore, not even in the name of forgiveness." She nodded, tears still streaming. "I understand. Do you want to know what would actually help me?" I asked. "What would actually mean something?" "Yes, anything. Leave me alone. Let me build my life without feeling guilty about it. Stop seeing me as the family villain or the family savior. Just let me be free." She stood up slowly. "Okay, I can do that." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I looked up your foundation. What you're doing for women in architecture, it's amazing. It's exactly the kind of thing Mom should have been proud of you for all along." After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the harbor through my window. Boats moving in and out, people walking the waterfront life continuing in its messy, complicated way. I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I felt something quieter and deeper. I felt like myself. That evening, I went to a gallery opening in the South End. One of the architects I'd mentored through my foundation was having her first show photographs of buildings she'd designed paired with stories from the people who lived in them. It was beautiful and human and exactly the kind of architecture I believed in. "Vicky," she said when she saw me pulling me into a hug. "I'm so glad you're here. None of this would exist without you." "It would exist," I corrected gently. "Maybe just a little later. You did this. Your talent, your vision, your work." "Still," she insisted, "you gave me the confidence to try. You showed me what was possible." Standing there in that gallery surrounded by young women who were building careers and lives on their own terms, I realized something. I hadn't just demolished a house and escaped a toxic family. I'd demolished the belief that my worth came from serving others. I'd demolished the idea that I needed to earn love through sacrifice. I'd demolished the foundation of who I thought I had to be, and I'd built something better in its place. A year to the day after that text message from Croatia, I was standing on the balcony of my penthouse, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sun set over Boston. My phone buzzed, another unknown number. For a second, I tensed, wondering if it was Dominic again, or my mother, or some other ghost from my past refusing to stay buried. But when I opened the message, it was something else entirely. "Vicky, it's Dominic. I've had time to think. We made mistakes. Can we talk?" I looked at those words at this man who still thought he could manipulate his way back into my life. This man who'd stolen from me, betrayed me, tried to destroy me. This man I'd once loved enough to build a life with. I smiled, thought about all the different responses I could send. Something angry, something cold, something that would hurt him the way he'd hurt me. But then I remembered what he'd said in that text from Croatia, the words that had sparked my revolution. "Once it's old, it's dead in my eyes." I typed my response carefully, each word deliberate. "Sorry, but once it's old, it's dead in my eyes." Then I blocked the number permanently. I deleted the message, slipped my phone into my pocket, and raised my glass to the skyline. To controlled demolitions, to clean foundations, to buildings that stand on their own, to the life I'd torn down and rebuilt stronger and truer than anything that came before. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval or validation or love. I was just me, Victoria Vance, architect and destroyer, builder, and survivor. And I was finally, beautifully, devastatingly free. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to demolish something in your own life to build something better? Have you ever walked away from people who couldn't see your worth? What would you do if you discovered the people closest to you were planning your betrayal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the foundations in your own life that might need examining, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of people who chose themselves when everyone else chose against them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tear down what's killing you and start again.